It goes without introduction.
Good, okay.
Because I think just doing a podcast,
Yeah.
as far as I can, because I'm not into all these technology and all this type of thing, and I think it helps sometimes that you don't get too much into it, because all you do is follow the rest.
That's true.
And I think that sometimes you have to have your own sort of style. You know, do what you do and the reason why you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, too much caffeine now, he'll be firing.
So first of all, my name's Chris Amos. I'm a salon owner and a business educator with Richard Wallace.
Who's also a salon owner, and we're in my salon today,
That's
doing
right.
our first podcast, Chris.
That's right, yeah. Beautiful salon it is as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. And so we're going to do a podcast, and I think we were just talking about how do we introduce this. And I think that the first thing is we need to explain why we're doing a podcast, because I think there's so many salon owners out there that need something that they can sort of switch on to daily, weekly, and get something that they're going to be able to use in their businesses. Is that right? Would you say that's right?
Yeah, like a friendly,
A friendly
voice.
tool that they can
they can sort of-
turn to.
yeah.
We have a business education company called Winning Ways, and Winning Ways Education. And just to give you some history of where we come from, 30 years ago,
Not for you.
yeah, for me, 30 years ago, I got involved with a business education company called 365, and to help me when I was in business with my partner of then, and it helped me so much that I was in it for 22 years and became a lecturer for those for that business education company. And when I decided to come out of it, I had a few people ask me to do some education, and that's when I started to do a course, and they asked me to do another one, and then I thought, this is starting to get bigger. I'll get my mate Richard Wallace, and that's when I contacted Richard, and so we started to put courses together. And people, originally we did 5-day course over 5 months, and then after the 5 months had finished, they all asked for more, and that's when we had to come up with something else, what was ongoing. So we've been doing that now for how long now?
About 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. So we're finding that the people, as I said earlier, I think that being a business owner is a very lonely place, and I think if you asked many salon owners, that is one of the hardest things to overcome, is to feel that you're on your own and there's nowhere to go for help. And so ideally the podcast is something that I would love for people to be able to turn it on and have information that would be relating to their businesses that they can get involved in and find some answers from it. So the first question for us, I think, is 1, why are we doing it? 2, why are you really doing it? And 3, what should you be doing? And I think when you ask yourself 3 questions in that format, by the 3rd time you get to the real answer. And the real answer is that we're doing it to help salon owners. And if I was going to call this anything, I'd call it help, because that's what it's all about, helping salon owners.
Yeah.
That's what I'd really like to get out of this podcast as an ongoing thing. What about you, Richard?
Well, the assumption is that you can be very lonely in a very busy place. You can be surrounded by people, staff and clients, and like I said, when you're facing challenges is when you feel lonely, because who do you turn to when you're having to kind of exude confidence, make out everything's going really well, when actually behind the scenes it's you miss information. You don't know what you don't know, and sometimes it's difficult to ask or to find out where that is. And I think our sort of quest at the very beginning was to make this affordable and to get to more people, because business education can be very expensive and it puts a lot of people off. So usually at a time when you need it most is when you least got the funds and the time to invest, and that's where it becomes a challenge. So hopefully the podcast is a really easy, accessible space for people to be able to come, and over the course of delivering these, we should start to build up a sort of portfolio of information that they can dip into if they're thinking about pricing or wages or marketing or whatever, to help them.
Fantastic, yeah, I think that's where we're going.
So what we're going to kick off with, Chris, what do you think?
Well, if we was doing a course, putting a course together, one of the first ones we put together it's about where you are now, where do you want to get to, and it's about the vision of where your business is heading. But if we're quite honest, this is where most people go wrong, right at the very beginning. And it's only down the line, down the get the 2 years, 3 years, 4 years out the way, and things start to sort of show cracks within the business. And it's mainly because the foundations right at the very beginning wasn't laid strong enough. And so I think that we need to spend more time on making sure that where we are today and where we want to get to is correct. And so to be able to make the decision of where you're going, you need to know some benchmark figures, you need to know some information on the business side of a hairdressing business. And when I say the business side of it, many salon owners are fantastic at the product. The product that they have is the hairdressing. But they sort of become a little bit short of education in the business area, figures and those type of things. And it's always been the way. It doesn't matter if you're a hairdresser or a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter. They're very good at their trade, but later on as they grow their business, they start to find there's a problem along the way. The education side of it isn't in that department strong enough.
Well, they don't grow, and I think that's the for me, when I started education back in very early on, was for that reason, is that most salons are small.
Yeah.
And they don't grow to any substantial size, most of them. And so it's a bit like they start day one with usually how I started, myself, and just myself, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then, you start to employ 1 or 2 people, get to 2, 3, maybe 4 people, and never really kind of move that far beyond that size, really. And I think that's because the skills required to get you to that first point, and the skills required to get you past that point, they don't know. And this fear then comes in that if I employ more people, I'm going to have more problems and costs more, and I don't move to a bigger shop because the rent will be higher, and I learn to manage what I've got and stay and never really and leave themselves vulnerable, because you know with 3 or 4 people you can lose a stylist, maternity, all those different things. So they basically spend their entire I believe their kind of salon owner life in fear of losing people, not doing what they, it must be very difficult without the skills to be able to grow into sort of a bigger salon like you've got.
Well, there aren't many salons this size though, are there?
No.
And that's because of that fear factor of employing people and growing.
Yeah, I think so. It's the only reason I can think of, because why wouldn't you? If you can employ 3 people or 4 people, why can't you employ 20 or 25?
I can only relate it to when because I was a men's hairdresser, gentleman's hairdresser. And as I grew in business, I remember thinking back now that the only reason I had confidence in going forward and building was because I was getting information from somewhere, which was 365 at that time, which was the business education company. And the only reason we went to it in that day was because we ran out of ideas. So once we'd gone to the business education company and started to find out how you ran a business, from that point of view, fear disappeared for me. I just did what they told me to do, and it grew and it grew, and I felt confident, and it just grew, and we went at a pace where I felt was right for me, and because you can't grow a business overnight, so it takes time, and I was happy with that. I liked taking my time growing the business. But it was because I had the information. And I think the reason why most people don't grow their businesses because they haven't got the information. They tend to try to grow their business on the hairdressing skills only side of the business. And that's where they become stuck. And the foundations needs to be much more than just hairdressing today and in the future. And I think that to get a stable business, you need to have 3 areas, which we call our 3 circles.
Yeah, 3 circles. Just keep it, well, trying to keep it as simple as possible, really, because it's easy to say something like foundations, but what exactly do we mean by that? You know, so the first thing is the work itself. So you've got to, like any profession, you've got to be able to deliver the product. You've got to be good at your craft.
Yes.
You can't escape that. You can't bypass that. You've got to basically put the groundwork in, become very skilled, knowledgeable, so that at least you can do the job that your people are paying you to do. That's the kind of first given, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's the first circle, whether it's hair or beauty or, like I said, gents, nails. It could be all. It's relevant to all 3, isn't it? All those different things. What's the next circle?
Well, the first circle is your hairdressing, which is your
Skills,
product.
yeah.
Your second circle is your business side of it, your business knowledge.
Yeah.
That you need to know, are you paying people correctly? How much money can you expect to make from a hairdressing business? Which is a simple question, but many people don't realise how much can be made from hairdressing once you start to pay the people and pay the costs and that.
How little, you mean?
How little it is, yes, sorry. And then you've got below the 2 circles, then you've got your client's journey.
Yeah.
And your people skills.
So the client journey really is the
product.
packaging of the product, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Which, to be fair, especially over the last 10 years, really, it's become almost an equal contributor. Because when I first started, you could, as long as you were pretty good on your skill, the rest of it was all a bit hit and miss, but you'd still keep clients. But no, the client's expectation around service and the environment, all those different things, has become almost the hairdressing. If you're paying a high price for it, it's an expectation now.
Yes.
The appreciation's kind of gone. It's, well, I've paid that much money, so I expect that to be good. But what else have you got to kind of give me? So and that's why the client journey is so important, isn't it? And all those circles are in equal measure.
Yes. There's not one bigger than the other one. So do you think, Richard, that the enjoyment has gone out of running a business in the hairdressing industry at the moment?
Was it supposed to be enjoyable?
Nobody told me that.
Oh, yeah.
And why do you think that is? Is that really down to costs?
I just think if you've been in business for a long period of time, you've sort of seen different eras, and so there's the challenge of costs. Obviously, have gone massive. Employing people is expensive, and also finding people and finding the right people and managing sort of today's average sort of person is difficult. Costs are the first, which is why the industry really is moving in the way that it's moved. So, I think it's the statistics this year say that 60% of everyone in this industry now is self-employed.
Right.
I mean, that's tipped completely the way. Yet most salons look like they're employing their people. So they've done it for the reasons they've done it, which isn't kind of they're not trying to deliberately tax avoid, but people. The cost of employing people is just so expensive. You've got maternities. How much does that cost?
Well, I'm an expert in maternities. I am. I've had 12 in the last two and a half years.
Yeah.
Stylists.
I mean, that is a wounder, isn't it? I mean, you can't get beyond that because you're losing turnover, and then you've got the costs of paying them as well.
And finding more to replace them. It's been character building, I think. But It's one thing we touched on earlier is that we talked about foundations.
Yeah.
And if the foundations hadn't been laid very strongly in the first place, having 12 stylists all go on maternity in 2 years would have finished the business
Yeah,
off.
gone.
But because the foundations consisted of training our own people, having a concession of people coming onto the salon floor, and not relied on recruiting from outside, I think that helped us dramatically.
Well, it gave you the numbers because, like I said, if you got 18 stylists, 19
Yeah,
stylists.
yeah.
So you've got the numbers to lose, as hard as that is. But if you had even a small team of 3 or 4 people and you lost just 2 of them to maternity,
Yes,
that's half your revenue gone. Then you've got to pay them. I mean, it doesn't make it worthwhile then, does it?
that's right.
That's how precarious sort of that is, really. But going back to the cost for a minute and what's increased is, I mean, years ago we used to kind of, even with receptionists and apprentices, you know, your wage percentage would be about 47%, and
Yeah.
now you're running up at 50. I mean, now it's good if it's 55, but invariably it spins up sometimes to 60, 62. I mean, it's a huge, massive amount of all your turnover being taken in people. That makes you think about, well, what's left, because yeah, you can have fun in a salon, and you can, you know, you said, is it less enjoyable than it used to be? You can always find fun with regard to the people. It's a creative job, and you can have the fun that way. But that only works in conjunction with when you come away from it, that it's worth your while. So in other words, you're earning the money that kind of rewards the work that kind of goes into that.
Yes.
But if you're working and working and working, and behind the scenes you're not generating any profit, and in fact you're losing money, then it's hard to find joy here if behind the scenes you're being challenged.
Yeah.
And when we talk to more and more salon owners, that's really where that comes in, which is why then when something comes up, when an accountant, for example, says, you know, your wage percentage has gone to that, why don't you just make them self-employed? That will solve that problem. I can see the temptation. I can see why people do it. But then it's without having another voice, another person you can turn to say, well, hang on a second, let's look at where that takes you. Because invariably you can't grow it then, because you've lost your employees and they all think they're self-employed with what comes
Well,
from
common
that.
sense doesn't help running a business. Silly how that sounds. But the common sense would tell you, cut costs by making people self-employed. The costs are reduced by a holiday pay, national insurance contributions.
But employers' national insurance is what costs them. It's the biggest cost, isn't it? I mean, it's usually accounts for about 10% on top of what you're already paying them.
Yeah.
And now pensions, I mean, which is what they need, but again, it's another cost.
Yeah.
And, you know, suddenly you're thinking, well, hang on, what's left for me? You know, it's hard.
But it's so easy to fall into the traps of common sense would tell you, cut back on staff, cut back on support staff, receptionists, assistants, apprenticeships, trainers, whatever size salon you've got, but cut back in those areas. But it don't work that way, does it?
Well, then you're shrinking the team, and then you can't offer the same service, and invariably the client journey or the experience reduces, and then you lose clients. It's a bit of a vicious circle, really.
And then your prices are being altered and increasing to cover some of the costs, and then your client's journey has reduced in quality, and so you get stuck in the profit is less.
Well, if I was a client, a consumer, and you look at hairdressing prices from the sort of, you know, the low end to the top end, I wouldn't have a clue what's the real price of something. So someone comes in here and, you know, they're given a price at the end, and, you know, I've been asked on 2 or 3 occasions just recently, you know, how do you justify this price? Now I can justify it and break it down and show what little's left over if someone was to ask me. But it still changes, well, how come down the road can they do a colour and cut for 50 quid?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is they can't. That's a loss. They don't realise it yet. They're just assuming that because money's going in the till, I must be winning.
Yes.
But in that service has actually cost them money to do if they went back and priced it. But it goes back to that foundations, understanding that to do service A, and you need a qualified person to do that, there's a cost to that, a base cost that most salons are already below. Without factoring in cost of the product, which has gone up, well, any salon owner would know that's gone up dramatically over the last few years, and pricing hasn't gone up in line with the cost of the product, and the services have changed. So they're using more product, and you're seeing again going back to percentages for a minute. You know, we's always kind of strive for 8%. I know you did sort of 7, 8. You know, and now we talk to salons, and they're at 16, 17%. And then if you wage percentage, you can sort of see how quickly it is to kind of get into making a loss in a salon, just with just a couple of little things.
And then that comes back to the original question, is that the loneliness of a salon owner feels the pressures gathering onto them, and before you know it, the lease is coming up for renewal, and they look, do I want to carry on?
Yeah.
And this is where we find that there's a lot of salons, which is very important, that some of the good salons as well, you know, that they're disappearing, and we can't afford to lose salons like that.
Well, no, the assumption is that, you know, every salon owner once all the salons closing, makes less clients. That isn't how it works.
No.
This isn't based on a zero-sum game. So for me to win, you don't have to lose. This isn't how this works. In fact, you need a strong industry.
Yes.
You need to eliminate some of the salons out there that are just not really proper salons. They're just playing on it, and those people would be better off both emotionally and financially just to work in salons like ours, because then they wouldn't have all that hassle. Then they could enjoy their work. They kind of got conned into opening a salon thinking that was the way to go. That was the only choice they had if they weren't in a salon that was when they were growing or they were being trained. I'll open my own. But invariably, you ask most salon owners, if given the choice again, would they open? I would say at least half would say no. And the other half are just lying.
But it is interesting.
If there was an alternative, and
Yeah.
that's the problem, you know, where's the alternative for this? So I think going back to, you know, if I was sat with a salon owner here today talking to them, the first thing I'd look at is how's your salaries work?
Yeah.
You know, what system have you got in place? Do the team understand it? Are they in charge of their own destiny?
Because most wages are a complicated
We've made it.
cube.
Well, the
type
industry's
of-
made them complicated. It's a bit like mushrooms. You know, how you keep them in the dark and feed them rubbish. You know, it's that's what we would convince the same. So you just learn an old pattern and you repeat it. It isn't until someone says, "Whoa, stop." They need to know how they're going to earn money and giving them control, and then that way it takes away all the pressure off the salon owner to have someone knocking on the door all the time saying, "Well, I need some more money. I want a pay rise. Give me more money." Well, you need systems in place to sort of say, "Well, I can only share out what comes in."
And to be fair, where do most salon owners learn the wage structure?
From previous salon owners,
Which
is
might have
old.
been wrong,
Yeah.
out of date, and so the old brown sort of envelope, sort of,
Bit of cash.
yeah, a bit of cash here, there, and that's where they got their information from, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but because it's not working anymore, that's why they're going to rent a chair, because
Yeah.
they're trying to keep that. They've tried to keep that system, but it's not worked because invariably they didn't get paid very much, and then the stylist turn around and says, "Well, I need more money," and you're thinking, "Well, I've got to pay more money, but I can't afford to pay more money, so I'll make them self-employed, make them feel important." And then and in line with that, then they should be able to do what they want, wear what they want, come and go as they please, you know. And they don't have that because they're not really self-employed. And how do you grow someone? How do you grow a team of self-employed people? I mean, a team's a team. Although it's costing us more money to keep our team together, I just would not go down the rent-a-chair self-employment route for a team member, because I just don't see the future in that. So really, the problems at the moment are none other than economic problems.
Yes.
In other words, it's the pricing that's held those salons back. So we will pass the cost on, to the client sensitively. You can't just go in there and keep banging the price up. But over time, you have to keep that as a moving system, because otherwise you can't afford to keep doing what you're doing. What you have to do alongside that is to work under the two circles, which is make sure your product is still fantastic, and to make sure that you deliver it in a beautiful environment with all the things that they would expect. Because there is still a market for clients who want that high-end service, whether it's cars, hotels, restaurants. There is a market for clients who want to be different to the rest, and you have to make sure that your environment is appealing to that client base, the ones who will pay those bills, because they give you the ability to grow and continue to grow. Because I think if you can get your systems and foundations correct, I think you can still grow this environment.
What's your thoughts on a working salon owner and somebody who runs the business where, like myself and you, where we used to be on the salon floor, but we've sort of stepped back now and we have people who are operators, the sort of working onto the salon floor, but we tend to spend all our time making sure that everything's in place for them to get the best out of the...
Well, it's part of that, you know. I mean, I've got family in other industries, building, etc., and they're, you know, the terminology is they're off the tools now. You know, they're not on the tools.
Yes.
You know, whether that's a builder or electrician, whatever. In other words, they've got to a size where they can sit back and employ other people to do that, and they can become more strategic in the office environment. Lots of salon owners do that too soon because they haven't really got the revenue to be able to not contribute. Or they're not very good at the office stuff, so they're better on the salon floor, so I stay there. But the goal has always got to be for a salon owner to at least get to the position that you could take a step back.
So does that come back to the very first start of this podcast? Is that the vision of what sort of business you want? You have to have it in your mind of, do I want to be on the salon floor working and have a small team working with them?
Boutique.
Or do I want to grow the business to the point where I don't work on the salon floor anymore and I employ more people?
Yeah.
So having that vision in your mind is important right from the very beginning, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you haven't got that idea of where you want to go to, it's very difficult later on to start to change, mainly because of size of business, the size of the unit, which is what most people, they get the most out of their unit, as in size of the unit, and then...
Or they buy it.
Or they buy it, and then they need to grow the size of the unit, but don't get past that fear of letting go of what they've made a success of to get to the next.
Well, they look at something like, if you look at, let's say you're looking at moving to a larger unit, which we've done previously, and it is a really scary thought because you look at what you're doing currently and the sort of revenue you're generating, you then look at a big unit and you think, oh, that would be really expensive, but you're looking at it from the perspective of what you're currently taking.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't factor in the fact that if you're going to go to a bigger unit, you're going to be taking more money, and in lots of ways, as long as that cost is the same from a percentage point of view, you're going to generate more because it's economies of scale. But I've become fearful because I look at that and think, oh God, that'd be too scary. Should I take on 2 more stylists? It'd be too scary. And it's that fear that holds them back.
We hear that a lot in salon owners, don't we?
Yeah, because I think sometimes when they're making choices to say, like I said, you can stay reasonably small and, if that's the vision that you want, then that's fine. But I think a lot of them tell themselves they want that vision because of that fear. So it's a nice way of sort of saying, well, I don't really want to grow.
Yeah.
But you still got to, even if you're looking at it from a boutique perspective or a small salon, you want it more personal, you still got to have slightly larger team because you've got to factor in that people leave, people get pregnant, people do all these sorts of things. So it still leaves you in a precarious position if you don't have at least 6 to 7 stylists.
There's 7 stylists.
Is the kind of the first sort of safety net, really.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of wiggle. If you lose 2, it's still a lot, but it's not. But if you've got 4 and you lose 2, and they tend to go in 2s.
Yes.
It's just the nature of how it works. Someone leaves and thinks, maybe I should leave.
And also coming on to recruiting now, because recruiting is a very
Impossible.
precarious
well,
thing now,
it's
isn't
going
it?
back to again. It's factors that happen outside of our environment that we have to manage. So for apprentices, for a start. So years ago, I started hairdressing at 16. You stayed on at school for a year, didn't you?
Yeah, come out with a
Same
handful of nothing.
But you started work at 16, which maybe going back 30 years ago was kind of the norm. Maybe if you were clever, you stayed on and went and did something else. But if you weren't in that department, then you left at 16. You went to college or you went into a job, and that was perfectly acceptable at that point. Now, the difference changes that now you can't leave education until you're 18. And schools are incentivised to keep anyone who's, unless they're going to really fail miserably, to keep them till they're 18 because they're getting paid for that. At that point then, the cost of taking someone on as an apprentice age 18 becomes not expensive in the first part of the training, but a year after that, they become very expensive. So economically, going back to this being an economic problem, then you won't keep them. So then you've got no apprentices coming in. So that's the first part of that. And the second part is where the training over the last few years in regard to colleges, and I'm not criticising colleges for this because it's just the way it's been set up, but they're producing NVQ 1, 2, 3 level stylists that just don't have any ability to come into a busy salon and be able to function. They need more training when they arrive in the salon. But if you're hiring someone as a stylist and paying them as a stylist, you need them to be able to perform. You don't need another trainee, especially an expensive one. So what it's left is a vacuum of... There's lots of people out there. I mean, our last ad, I think we had 30 applicants. I've interviewed one. So 1 out of 30 were just... The only 1 out of 30 was the only one that was worth even having a conversation with.
Wow.
I mean, that is frightening. And the other ones who were... I mean, some of them were a bit... They shouldn't have been applying, but some of them were applying, just didn't have what it took.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So then we're saying that you've got to be able to deliver a high-end quality product, deliver high-end customer service.
Because of the cost of the
because
product.
Of the cost of the product, and you haven't got people to deliver it. So you've got a mismatch. And that's what most salons are facing. And so they get frustrated because they can deliver it, but they can't get their teams to deliver it. So how do you create the systems and training?
And again, with smaller salons, with smaller teams, there isn't so much of a career path for somebody to join a smaller salon to see themselves grow and develop in that business, where bigger salons, they can offer a bit more.
They just offer more choice, really. Yeah, I mean it's and also where people today are told that you'll have 4 or 5 careers in your lifetime. That was never told to us. You're just going to get your head down, get on with it. Job for life type thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays people think, well, if I'm not getting what I want from it, I'll give up. And you think you've trained you for 3 years. You've only been on a salon floor 2 years, but they're not making any progress, so they'll go and do something different.
So can I quickly, because if I was listening to this, I'd think, my God.
Cheerful podcast.
Well, I've got to keep tuning into these two. Because you do need to think, well, realistically, yes, things are changing, and there are some sort of challenges that we face. But as your business, have you seen your business, how has it survived in these times? Is it still making the profit that...
Yeah, it still makes a profit. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't do it if I didn't make a profit. What's the point?
Well, my question would be, can you make money in this industry?
Yeah, of course you can.
And I would say from my business, I would say yes.
Yeah, you can.
But you have to get some things
Yeah.
right. You cannot follow what they've done in the past. You cannot expect to just open the door and get busy now. You have to have some fundamentals in place.
Yeah.
And these include, you've got to have a vision for the business, you've got to have a wage structure.
That rewards that is set up to reward the team member,
Yeah.
so they feel valued, not just from a kind of recognition, but from a financial perspective.
Absolutely. So you've got to get your wage structure right, your pricing correct.
Yeah.
And you've got to educate everybody within the business about business. It's no good just the salon owner understanding about business and everybody following.
No.
Everybody has to understand how a business works, where the money goes, so that everybody comes on board.
Yeah.
So that when you're talking to your team, they have an understanding of business, so that they understand where you're coming from as a salon owner and why you're introducing certain changes to the business. Otherwise, you're asking them to do things that they don't understand, and you've got more problems with the team then if they don't understand why you're asking.
Well, if you don't share it with them, they just think everything, all the money in the till's yours.
Yeah.
You're not paying them very much, and so
Yeah.
it is a win-lose.
Yeah.
You're winning, they're losing. It's not until you explain to them and educate them that they understand that actually it's been set up for everyone to win.
Which is why we ask a lot of the people who are connected with Winning Ways to bring their team on these courses
Yeah.
because it's very important that they come out of their environment and start to learn.
Well, if
that
you don't
there's no
educate them,
secrets.
I mean, people lose stylists to, you know, whether they go mobile or whether they open a salon. Most don't open salons now because salons just aren't opening like they used to open.
No, they're not. No.
So they're going mobile or they're going rent a chair down the road. And the reason they do that is because they're not uneducated. I've never lost anyone to rent a chair down the road.
No,
I don't know about you.
No.
Only one of my team has ever left and opened, well, actually two now, and one of them is about to close it. The other one sold up, you know, last year because it's hard.
Again, it comes back to good at hairdressing, but
Yeah, good at
they
that.
haven't got the business side or the vision of where they're going and what they want.
Yeah, just assumed that this was easy.
Yes, and it's not.
It's not.
And that's why you need support. Otherwise, you become a lonely figure in that.
We're not
office.
going back down that miserable route, Chris. Now they've gone on.
But that's what's good about sharing with other salon owners,
Yeah.
is that, first of all, you've got to keep the lighter side of it as well. Otherwise, really isn't no point in doing it, because it's a great industry. But we've got to get together and have some changes.
It's just
to the
lack
industry.
leadership for a long period of time. I mean, you know, that's its problem.
Yeah.
And we've relied on the manufacturers to educate us, or you know, or to lead us, if you like, or the federations and people like that. But in reality, they've got their own challenges,
Yes.
and so it's kind of got muddled along, and it's created its own problems. So now it's about those sort of, I shouldn't use the word better salons, but the ones who seem to have the better systems and are doing things
Yes.
well, to really share their information with the people who are coming up. And that's
Yes.
really the purpose of Winning Ways. When I think we first sort of started it, it is to help salons. It's sort of saying that we started small. We didn't just arrive in these type of salons. You know, my first salon was, tiny, but it kind of grew it from being educated. So it's possible, and that's all you're showing them is the steps to. But we haven't done that in the past.
Yes.
The successful people kind of go, well, I'll keep it all to myself. But no, we're saying that you need other salons around you because you want the industry to be seen as stronger. So for me, it is about sharing that information, and we do share all our information with salons and other people just to give them an idea of where we are. And although the numbers look impressive, at times when you chunk it down, the ratios are the same whether you're big or small. You just get more if it's bigger.
Yes.
And actually, people problems. You know, yeah, of course, employing people is difficult because people are difficult now. But actually, having more of them is actually easier than having less of them. And that's the other kind of belief that people have. Well, if I employ more people, I'm going to have so many problems. But in reality, you can't manage that many people. So you have to be slightly one step removed. So it becomes easier to manage them or lead them. So it's actually better to have a bigger salon than a smaller salon. And when you say that to people, they look at you and say, I can't see that. But it's not until you've done it and someone's saying, listen, I've done that, this just trust what I'm telling you. And they look at you a bit sort of frightened. You know, have faith. Have faith.
But you've had 3 salons. I've had 3 salons in the past, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And both of us have closed them down and had one big salon.
Yeah.
So coming back to, do you have to make money in hairdressing? Do you have to have a bigger salon? Is it easier to have a bigger salon than to have 1, 2, 3, 4 salons, a chain of salons?
I think the difficulty with having a chain of salons or having more than one salon, it's difficult to replicate quality.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges I had with that. But if you're going to have a second salon, the reason a salon owner opens a second salon is to hopefully earn more money from that salon as well. So you're getting some revenue from that one, otherwise there's no point. But then you put a manager in there I'm a manager now, so you're not here, so I'm managing it for you. So they've got to be rewarded. The second salon is usually a lot smaller than the first salon. And so it's set up in a way that it can't really generate huge amounts of money. So eventually it's just not, it'll tick along.
So you can end up with 3 small salons with 3 overheads, 3 lots of problems.
And 3 drains on your time.
Which is how I found it. Everything that I wanted to implement was watered down because I found that even though the one salon wasn't more than 200 yards from the other salon, you couldn't be in 2 places at once.
Well, mine were 13 miles. There was 13 miles between each one of them.
Wow.
And I spent those years in I call it the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
I just got lost in the middle of them all.
You were travelling most of your time.
Just got frustrated in 3 different places.
But it's true though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard.
And although we've had challenges over the years, we found in my salon that we did better in recessions than when things was going well for the country. And what I mean by that is that when the recessions hit, our service and the value to the client stood out, where when everybody was doing well, it was harder to stand out from the crowd.
Well, don't they say all boats rise on a rising tide?
Absolutely.
And then when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing trunks. I don't know if
I've never understood that from the day I heard it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you've got the systems in place, and this is what we're ultimately talking about, we're saying that if you're going to have a salon, it's not just based on the personality of the owner, which is what we've seen in this industry.
Yeah.
You've got some celebrity hairdresser, and you know, they set this, you know, that alone will win you and keep you busy. And what we've seen is that that model has gone. And those, you know, celebrities are very good at their craft, but they're not very good at business, which is why some of them are no longer in business. What we're saying is that if you've got the right systems in place, then if things do get tough, the systems protect you in tough times.
Because they're tried, tested, they're not something.
They're just winning formulas for what,
Yeah.
you know, there's a winning formula for everything that you do. And so while other people are compromising or don't have a formula, when things get tough, you'll compromise on it.
How important do you think it is for somebody like us who are educators in business to have an existing business today to share their experiences with people today? Because you find that there's a lot of advice given by people who had businesses 20 years ago, 10 years ago, but they haven't got a business today, but they're sort of, and their information, what they're giving is very sound and good, but it's very different today than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, without being critical of that, you know, those people who, like you said, have chosen education as a career choice now, and have got experience of salon ownership. Then there's a number of things that they can share, motivational type stuff, incentives, those type of things. But in terms of knowing what benchmark numbers work today, they don't have that benchmark number, and they don't have the challenges that go with that. So it's very easy from the outside to go, well, let's run this incentive and that will really work for them. And you're saying, do you know what it's like to employ, and I hate using sort of general terms, but millennials or a snowflake? I mean, they're a very different group of people now that have managed, their motivations are very different to what they were. So in other words, what worked 10 years ago will not work today, period. And that's been the most challenging thing, because when I've gone to try and find solutions to current problems, the old way of doing it is not the new way of fixing it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of learning on the hop. So this isn't kind of going back to a new strategy. It's learning really as we go along now, trying that's not working, I need to adapt. That's not working, I need to adapt. And if you're not current, I don't believe that you can really, you can offer some advice, but you don't really have the credibility to say, right, this is the solution. I wouldn't be very comfortable if I didn't have a salon to say, do this, if I'm honest.
If there was one thing that sapped your energy more than anything, what would it be today?
People.
I would agree. Is that you really need help in managing people. And I would say that the reason for that is that when we recruit, because we need to add people to our businesses, we tend to take on the wrong people, because you need somebody, so you tend to go for the person who turns up.
Got a pulse.
They turned up, they got a pulse, let's take them on. And it tends to drain us, and we all fall into this trap. We all fall into this trap. It doesn't matter, because I've almost been there, but you need someone, or you think that you need someone.
No, you do need somebody.
And so you take them on, knowing that they're a borderliner. And that's when your problems start. Now, I always said that the reason why your problems start is because you stopped looking for somebody once you took them on.
Yeah.
Where if you'd have refused them, You carried on looking for them, and the chances are you would have found the right person eventually. But we gave up too early. And I think that's where the biggest problem starts.
I'd agree with that.
And that drains your energy, and that's why you start to pull your hair out and start to get every day the energy goes and goes and goes, and before you know it, you don't know, you haven't got an answer to it, and there's nowhere to turn to.
Well, things can start to fall apart quite quickly when you're in that environment. Sorry, not in that environment. When you're in that kind of flow, if you take on one, someone is not right, but then it's quite easy. They feed off into other people, and suddenly you're thinking, "Whoa, it's not right around here," and it has been because that one person.
It's like an emotional roller coaster, isn't it? Oh, I found someone. Oh, they never turned up the next day because they were self. Oh, they're back again. Oh, it could be good. Oh no, they've come late. Oh, they've come back in. And you think,
I've had a chat with them. I think I've sorted it.
I've sorted it. And it is. And I do feel for salon owners at the moment, because especially if you're trying to run a column as well yourself, it's impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really difficult.
And so that's why I feel that hopefully the podcast will start to give them some inspiration and some ideas that there are things out there that...
Well, I think we want to set this
They need to learn.
particular one up as a kind of an oversight basis on the industry.
Yeah.
But I think as we go forward, we'll start to actually share some specifics about what we're doing. You know, what we mean by that. You know, what is a good wage, structure. What is a starting point for a price list? You know, what should a graduate be charging? How much should a toner cost? You know, some of the real kind
Absolutely.
of meat on the bone.
Yeah, that's
type
right,
stuff.
yeah. And I think that's what it boils down to. I talk about a vision of where you're going, because I think that although it's a big, what I call a woolly subject, because it's not very specific, but the reason why I say that is that you've got to understand that an hairdressing business makes around 10% profit. So if you're only going to do a turnover of 100,000 in a year, you've got a problem right from the very beginning, haven't you? And even I can work that one out. So you do need to have some idea of the key areas of what, how much can a business make in this industry?
Well, definitely. At the moment, if we again move away from it being negative, there are some great opportunities because the high street is changing. There's lots of units, and they're going to be filled eventually by probably the people that were in secondary locations previously, and hairdressing beauty are very much part of that. Mm-hmm. It's sort of saying that they're the ones that will move out of the kind of second floor basement around the corner locations and get to to have a bit of a more of a kind of presence on a high street or even in a local shopping area, and you get an opportunity to go somewhere that maybe you didn't think you'd ever be able to get to, and do things that you never thought you were able to do.
So do you think, just quickly now, that in the next year, 2 years, are you optimistic?
Am I optimistic? I feel as if I just think if there's going to be success in this industry, for some, we'll be part of the success. Because of what
we know.
So I have faith in that, because if we can't make it work, then the industry is doomed. That's the way I kind of view it.
Yeah.
So if there's going to be success, then I think we'll definitely be part of that. I think it's still going to be challenging. I think it's going to be challenging economically based on what's currently happening here in this country. And I think you're not going to solve the people issue overnight. But I think that's a single generation that kind of working out that they've been lied to, and what they've been sold isn't quite working out for them. And I think the next one's coming through. I don't see following that path is going to take me on the journey to where I want to get to. So I can see it changing. I think it will change quite quickly. But I do think there'll be casualties along the way over the next year or two. And we're seeing that with salons anyway, aren't we? Salons closing, some big names as well, who have replicated, who have got multiple units, and very difficult to stand out. You can't rely just on the brand anymore, which is what they did.
Yeah. So would you say there was a saying that it's not the strongest who will survive, it's not the biggest, it's the ones who can adapt the quickest?
Darwin theory.
Yeah,
it is.
the ones who can adapt the quickest.
Change.
Yes.
But you need to get around, which hopefully sharing today will do that.
Encourage people.
You've got to get around people who are willing to share with you and give you the ideas, and
Yeah.
you've got to get out of the salon. You've got to get out of your environment and start to get around people who've got some of the answers that you need to be able to adapt and
We've
change.
got to learn off each
It's
other.
okay if you can change the quickest, but the shortcut to success is to find people who are already successful and successful today, and avoid the mistakes they made. They'll tell you all what to avoid. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. As long as you trust that, then implement their systems or some of them, or start working towards them. If someone's successful, the chances are you'll be successful if you've got some of the same systems, traits, and energy that those salons have over the others.
So I'd say that's a good place to finish here,
I think
because
so.
the message is you need to get around people, like-minded people, and share some of the ideas, and that's where you tend to learn.
The most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well done, Richard.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Chris.
much.
Well done.